that one glorious word represents more than just the geography between the Sabine and the Rio Grande. It represents a unique idea and way of life. A life of rugged individualism, proud self-reliance, gritty toughness, and fierce independence. That is what made Texas, and that is what will save her again. Howdy, folks. Sam Houston here. I want to thank you for tuning into the Feed Bandit podcast. Feed Bandit is the Texas first outdoors brand built by rabid Texans, for rabid Texans, and all those who aim to be one someday. We unapologetically promote the ideals that shape our Texas pride and Texas first patriotism through our love of hunting, the outdoors, and the gear and apparel we create. Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Check us out at feedbandit.com. And to repeat that great rallying cry from a former colleague of mine, liberty or death. Now, enough of my talking. Here are a couple of bandits that love Texas as much as I do. Enjoy.
Howdy, friend. Welcome back to the Feed Bandit podcast. Jimmy back with you. And on this one, we're going to continue our Whitetail Strategies series. And I actually got a new book that I wanted to go through with you guys. It's actually a quite beautiful book, the way that it was bound and the pictures and all that type of thing. And this is going to be really fun to go through. I've already read through a little bit of it here and there. And it's really good, amazing information. A lot of it will be kind of review stuff. Some will be new. But overall, we'll all be talking deer hunting, whitetail deer hunting here as we go through this book. So the book is by Field and Stream. It's the Total Deer Hunter Manual, 301 Essential Skills. So I want to go through all these skills with you together, and we'll talk about our thoughts on the particular skill they're talking about. Maybe we have a different way of looking at it. Maybe you do. But as we go through here, this will be quite the interesting, things to go through. But first, as we start this little mini series here on under the Whitetail Strategies series, there's some housekeeping stuff, some funny things to go through before we start diving into the actual 301 skills. So I hope you find some of this stuff of interest. So, did you know you might be deer crazy and I'll go through each one of these things. But first, did you know just 50 years ago, the sight of a deer made the papers in some states? Since 1990, the whitetail population has more than doubled. And today, over 30 million deer roam the United States alone, perhaps 35 million in North America. More than have ever inhabited this continent, or so they believe. In the course of just a few decades, our nation has become a deer paradise, and it has utterly transformed the face of American hunting. All across the land, from Maine to Montana, from Texas to Georgia, we're suddenly utterly obsessed with deer. Not sure if you're deer crazy? Well, here, from Field and Stream online readers, are 27 ways to be sure. All right, well, let's see what they are. So you might be deer crazy if, while watching Bambi with the kids, you rough score Bambi's dad. You become a teacher for the 3 straight weeks of deer hunting over Christmas break. When your significant other says deer, you reply, where? Your yard is planted with biologic. You put more effort into naming bucks than you did naming your kids. You make a gun with your index finger and thumb to take out Santa's reindeer in the neighborhood's Christmas decorations. You balk at deodorant, fearing you won't be scentless in May. Taxidermy bill is a line in your annual budget. You keep your most expensive clothing in a trash bag with leaves and dirt. Instead of family pictures in your wallet, you have trail camera photos of hitless bucks. Your main motivation for starting your own business was more time in the woods. And that one I can wholeheartedly relate to. If you're listening to this podcast right now, well, Feed Bandit was literally created as an excuse to get out into the woods more, but also maybe try to make some money along the way. Next one, you schedule your vacations around the moon phases. You follow the price of corn like a Wall Street commodities trader. You might be deer crazy if you drive a little farther when you see a deer crossing sign. Or a little faster when you see a deer crossing sign. You start a fight in church over whether Noah took a typical or non-typical buck aboard the ark. The smell of doe and estrus turns you on. You put a bigger set of antlers on your 3D buck target because you would have passed him with the ones he came with. You consider a shoulder mount fine art. And that I do agree with. It is art. And that's what I tell my wife. It's like, but it's art. It goes on the wall. It's beautiful. You might be deer crazy if you planned your wedding date to avoid an anniversary during deer season. Now I failed on that one since my anniversary or my wedding day was December 19th. So that was kind of a no-no, but we had to do it anyway. You might be deer crazy if you first saw a drone in the news and thought, mobile trail cam. Your son's name is Buck and your daughter's is Fawn. When a non-hunting friend says, look at that rack, you scan for deer. You total your truck hitting a deer and think, I hope the back straps are okay. I've thought about that. Around here where we live, there are axis deer roaming around. And I thought, my God, if I hit one or I saw someone hit one and it was just maybe a headshot or something like that, what do you do with that beautiful meat? You might be deer crazy if your wife leaves you on November 8th and you don't notice until the 18th. When shopping for a new family vehicle, your first consideration is where will I put the deer? You might be deer crazy if you've stood up a date to track a deer you didn't shoot. And finally, you might be deer crazy if you broke up with your girlfriend because she refused to bottle her mid-cycle urine like you asked. God, geez. Oh, boy. Okay, so this next thing here is spot 10 modern deer hunting trends. Let's see if we agree with these. How exactly is today's deer hunting different than in the recent past? Here are 10 key ways. More deer, bigger deer. At the turn of the 20th century, there were about 500,000 deer in the United States. As recently as the 1980s, there were only about 6 million. Today, that number has swelled to well over 30 million deer. And trophy buck numbers have skyrocketed too. Since 1970, the number of Boone & Crockett Club record book whitetail entries have increased by more than 700%. Pope and Young entries by more than 4,000%. Wow. Quality deer management. For decades, the goal of deer management was to increase the population, but with many herds recovered and some overpopulated by the late 20th century, a new model emerged. In 1988, South Carolina biologist Joe Hamilton started the Quality Deer Management Association with 3 goals. 1. Balancing herd size with habitat. 2. Balancing the herd's sex ratio. And 3. Balancing the herd's age structure. In many areas, this meant targeting does and passing young bucks. But both random departures from tradition. Today, the QDMA is the U.S.'s fastest-growing conservation organization, empowering individual hunters to engage in deer management and habitat improvement on an unprecedented scale. Since many hunters remain opposed to QDM. Still many hunters remain opposed to QDM. Or they just don't know about it, I guess. I can relate to some situations where maybe, and you hear people recount these stories about how they're trying to manage their land, to manage the deer on their land, but say their neighbor, to their lease or to the land that they own, they go out and just indiscriminately shoot whatever they see. That's very frustrating. If you have high fence, I guess maybe it doesn't matter, but most people don't, I don't think. So it's, you really want to try to get your fellow landowners and hunters and lessees, if you will, around where you are to get on and agree to some sort of management program. You know, it's frustrating when you're sitting there and you're like, all you do is you hear people shooting over there, and you know they're shooting, you know, young bucks or, you know, whatever they see. You know, that sucks. Food plotting. Planting forage for deer is the cornerstone of private land management. So popular that food plotting is now a commonplace verb among hunters. It started 25 years ago when Bassmasters founder Ray Scott started marketing a brand of clover designated specifically for use on deer leases. Today, hunters all over the country have turned into weekend farmers, sowing seeds to feed and attract deer. Antler point restrictions. The new model of deer management has been codified in many states' official regulations via antler list tags and quotas, but also antler point restrictions. A common APR, for example, requires hunters to pass any buck that doesn't have at least 4 points on one side. Although highly controversial, where APRs have been in place for several years, they typically enjoy overwhelming support from hunters. Yeah, and each county here in Texas may have their own kind of restrictions of the number of bucks, you know, that can be taken by each hunter, things of that nature. But of course, generally in Texas, they have the spread, regulations and things of that nature. So be sure to check what they are wherever you're hunting. Antler mania. Deer hunters have always been fascinated by big headgear, but the recent surge in trophy-sized bucks has spawned an unprecedented antler obsession, and hardcore deer hunters can guess a buck's gross B&C score within 10 inches at a glance. Modern antler mania is fun and harmless at best. At worst, antler snobs scoff at hunters whose bucks don't tally 3 digits. Yeah, I am definitely not an antler snob. I actually prefer to hunt and take cull bucks, ones that are not necessarily the super trophies and things of that nature. I mean, at some point, yes, I would like a regular super trophy. I don't really have one. I mean, I have a couple of shoulder mounts, but I don't have that super trophy, and that's fine with me. I like taking the culls. To me, they're the most unique. And what I'll do is I will boil the skulls, and I'll put them in my Hall of Horns, which is in my garage. I like looking at those, But everyone to each their own, I suppose. Shed madness. The spring hunt for shed antlers has become all the rage. At the 9th Annual Whitetail Classic Sports Show and Auction in Dubuque, Iowa, a 3-day event devoted to the sale of shed antlers. That's really cool. A match set of typical whitetail sheds fetched nearly $19,000. Today's antler geeks want that bone, whitetail, or muley as soon as it hits the ground. Wow, I did not know about that. That'd be really interesting to go to that annual Whitetail Classic Sports Show and Auction. Loss of access. Not long ago, you could bang on a door in Wisconsin's famous Buffalo County and be given the keys to a slice of whitetail heaven for nothing. Today, you couldn't lease the same land for less than $40 an acre. All over the country, it's getting tougher and tougher to gain access for a handshake. It's still possible, but you have to knock on many, many more doors. And I would say we here at Feed Bandit are super, super lucky that our families have some land that we can hunt on. And yeah, it takes a lot of time to find a good lease and to go out and find that place that you want to be on for a while. Devote a lot of energy and invest a lot of stands and blinds and whatnot. Get them out there. So yeah, it's tough. But also here in Texas, where I think the numbers may be above 95% of the land is privately owned anyway. So we either have to own it, lease it, or ask that owner if we can get access to their land to hunt their deer. So, no doubt it's getting harder and harder here as well. The trail cam craze. The first commercial trail cameras of the late 1980s were dismissed as either novelties or the latest technological threat to fair chase. Today, most serious whitetail hunters own at least one, and usually more, and they use them religiously to inventory, monitor, and pattern deer. It's now perfectly normal for a hunter to have hundreds of pictures of, and a name for, a buck before he kills it. That's fun. That's really fun to go through camera pictures, start patterning deer, so you kind of know maybe where they'll show up, and then have that one ready to go on the cut list, if you will. So you're sitting in that deer blind, and man, I love it when that dude walks in, and you're like, whoa. I actually think when you have trail cam pictures and you have a hit list like that, it to me it makes the buck fever even worse, because you've already looked at this guy for a while at these pictures, and then when you see him on the hoof walking in, man, it's like immediate buck fever. But that's fun. That's always fun. The gray deer decline. While whitetails flourish, dominating the deer scene, mule deer numbers have declined significantly from historic highs. Record book specimens have become increasingly rare too. Of the BNC's top 50 non-typical muley bucks, only 8 were shot in the last 20 years. Giant muleys are still out there, but they're much harder to find. And I wonder if that's because of this massive explosion in whitetail deer populations that we talked about earlier in the podcast. That's got to have something to do with it, I would imagine. And then deer media frenzy. Historically, outdoor magazines covered the entire sporting experience. In 1982, North American Whitetail, a magazine devoted solely to the whitetail freak, appeared on the scene. Now dozens of media outlets focus specifically on deer. Meanwhile, outdoor TV has grown from a few shows on Saturday morning to a few channels airing mostly deer hunting shows nonstop, amplifying the influence of celebrity in the deer hunting culture. Yeah, and I will say that I am guilty of, I don't know if guilty is the right word, but I do love to watch that. Like, I'll put on, we got the Samsung TV, so of course, it comes with the Samsung channels or whatever. And they have about 4, maybe 5 outdoors channels on there. And one of them is a deer hunting or, that type of hunting, devoted channel. And I've been known to put it on and watch it for hours, so that is fun. There's some quite entertaining folks, hunters to watch out there. Probably my favorite is Steve Rinella, the Meat Eater. That's a great show. I'm sure you've watched it, but if you're listening to this and you have not watched that show, go out and watch it, man. You learn a lot, especially about how to cook the meat once you're done. That's why I really appreciate that show. I've gotten a lot of tips from that on different cuts of meat, because he tries to eat everything, and sometimes you wonder what am I going to possibly do with this particular piece, of the deer or whatever, and it gives you the confidence to go in and eat whatever it is. I'll tell you what I do now, because in his show, if you've watched it or if you haven't watched it, he'll typically cook almost immediately, I guess, after the hunt from what he killed, and he'll have it in a cup or a pan over the fire, and he'll put some oil in there, and he'll just throw whatever the cut is in there, and what I've done is I've kind of adapted that to where, especially for whitetail, what I like to do is I'll get as many steaks cut out of it as possible, and then I'll take those steaks and I'll season them with some salt, pepper, garlic seasonings. Let them kind of sit to the side. Let it sit to the side for 30 minutes or so. Not too long. You don't really need to. And then what I'll do is I'll cook bacon in the cast iron skillet, and I'll do 2 rounds of bacon. I always, how the bacon is kind of long, and my skillet's kind of a medium circumference. So I'll break the pieces in half, and I'll do 2 rounds, full rounds of bacon, but I'll leave the bacon grease in there, and then I'll throw that deer steak in there, not long on each side, literally maybe 2 to 3 minutes. It's not long at all, if that, 2 minutes. Just enough to where right when when you touch it, it's not super soft. It resists a little bit, and I'll take that off. So whenever you cut into it, it's still, it's still very rare on the inside. And it's just that combination of that kind of the rare on the inside, cooked on the outside. That's one of the best ways to cook a deer steak, in my opinion. And then, of course, your garnish, your side to that is the bacon that you cooked. So it's just, that's really good. I would highly recommend doing it if you haven't done that yet. Same with, like say you take the deer heart or kind of any of the organs. That's how I'd eat them as well, so it's a really good way to do it for sure. All right. Well, I think I'm going to leave y'all on this one, this being kind of like the intro into this book, the Total Deer Hunter Manual. What we'll do going forward is I'll probably focus more on going through this as we go the next couple months, because as this is going to be released, we're deep in the middle of deer season right now. So why not start thinking about what does the total deer hunter need to know about hunting whitetail? And it'll be not just hunting, it'll be preparation and just understanding the animal itself. And how do you prepare for that animal, say, for the next hunting season? Things of that nature. So, all right. Well, with that, please stay tuned as we'll go through this. We have 301 essential skills that we need to talk through. And let's learn together. All right. Well, we'll do that on maybe the next one or one of the next couples, okay? We'll start that. So I really appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. We can't do it. We couldn't do this without your support. At least just listen. What do they say? Subscribe to the podcast. Do all those things. Also, check out our Instagram if you're not following us at Feed Bandit, the Instagram. Look us up there and follow us. And then go to our YouTube channel where Corn Bandit, he posts a lot of awesome stuff. We just got done talking about the blow up in trail cams and stuff like that. Well, he posts a lot of good stuff, from trail camera pictures to trail camera videos on our YouTube channel. We really think you would appreciate, and they're not long, they're short clips and stuff or whatever, so you can quickly go through and just see a lot of cool stuff about how the animals live and things of that nature. So go over there, check out I think it's Feed Bandit Texas is our handle on YouTube, but all you got to do is type in Feed Bandit on Instagram and on YouTube. So anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. And remember, support your local feed store.
Well, I hope the Bandits gave you an interesting episode that either entertained or educated you. Or better yet, both. Hell, I told them this podcasting thing looks harder to do than defeating Santa Ana. So if you would, please help them out by sharing it with all your like-minded friends to help the Bandits get the word out. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear and apparel to support the cause of Texas. Remember, Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Finally, as I said some time ago on the eve of the great battle, and I vigorously repeat here again, be men. Be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Well, fellow bandit, until next time.